Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me in the back? All right. Well, when they told me I was competing with Happy Hour, I said, I have to make sure this session's awesome. So I'm excited to be here. I will be covering a lot about Azure in the next 60 minutes. And so hopefully this is jam-packed. We have demos, we have a lot of content. But before I get started, I wanted to share a little bit of what happened at home. So I was getting on the flight a few hours ago. I just got in yesterday, and my kids were saying, hey, Dad, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Denmark. Now, I've been to Denmark, and I have to say, one of the things that's amazing about Denmark, if those of you that are native know this already, is Denmark consistently rates as the happiest country in the world, which is great. But my son didn't care so much about that. He was really excited about Legos. So he's like, Dad, just bring me a lot of Legos. And it got me thinking that in many ways, when you look at Azure, when you look at cloud, we're all builders. So again, just really excited to be in Denmark here today. Now, the last time I came to Denmark, I think I probably gave a talk on SharePoint. And 10 years ago or so, if I was giving this talk right now, this keynote, I would be talking about how tech teams can optimize costs, how we can reduce costs, how we can support the business. But boy, the world has changed. Right now, technology is fueling businesses. It's transforming businesses. And every company out there right now wants to be a technology company. So I was talking to UPS. UPS told me that they're a technology company first and a logistics company second. And if you look at other companies like Airbnb, if you look at Tesla, they're technology companies. So no matter if you're a customer or partner, it's really amazing to be in technology because we're helping drive growth. And it's not just any one vertical. If you look across industries, now this is a US chart, but it actually applies worldwide, that while other departments are growing or stagnant, technology growth is actually increasing across every single vertical because technology is actually fueling businesses everywhere. And one example I like to show is Tesla. Now, Tesla is just a really good example because it shows how a company like automobile can be transformed. It's not just the fact that it's an electric car, but the whole car is run by software. In fact, one of the studies, two things I'll share with you. A few weeks ago, when Tesla came out the Model 3, they saw through their data that the brakes were not optimal. Like the cars weren't braking exactly the right way. And they were able to get the telemetry, they were able to apply a software update, and boom, fix the problem. A traditional product, it would take a long time to get the signal. You'd actually have to do a recall. You'd actually have to go ahead and change your mechanics or your systems, and that whole cycle would take months, if not years. Here, you're able to do it in weeks. And this morning, because of data and because of software, they're able to apply an update and actually change the way Windows work. And I only shared this example because software can really change the way customers experience products, even if you're not in the technology industry. Now, you're all here. Hopefully, you're all energized with the potential. You're probably here because you see potential for transforming your business. You might be here because you're looking at the first workloads to move to the cloud. And I can tell you that every customer, and here I'm using a Gardner Framework, it's called the 5 Rs, is looking at how can they move their workloads to the cloud. And every workload, based on what it is and based on the business priority, is different. You may be rehosting. Rehosting is basically taking your physical environment on premises, moving it to IaaS, or infrastructure as a service. You might refactor, so you may containerize. You may re-architect and make it completely cloud, use a lot of cloud-native services. You might rebuild or replace. So if you're a SharePoint customer, replace would be using SharePoint Online. Rehost would be moving your SharePoint farm to Azure. And so you have a lot of options. And what I find customers doing most is looking at their estate, understanding what's important, and then understanding what journey each app takes. So now, over the course of the next 50 minutes, I'm going to run through kind of all the innovation we have for you so you can use Azure for your workload. And the one thing my team is trying to do is make sure that Azure is relevant for every single workload you have, even if it's a more traditional workload or it's entirely cloud native. Now, I have the pleasure of talking to a lot of customers, and more customers are no longer asking why. A few years ago, they would say, well, Arpan, why should I move to the cloud? There's security risks. I'm not sure I get it. It's expensive. I think people now understand that the cloud is important to fuel that innovation I talked about. Now the question is, how do I move? And boy, things are moving fast. And I'm reminded every day on how fast things move because, as I mentioned, with my kids, one of my kids, when he was growing up, was touching all the screens in my house. Like, they have fingerprints all over the place, which is a little messy. And then my other son was born a year after that, and he started talking to everything. And that's just a reminder to me in technology that in 1 year, things move so fast. You're also probably saying, why did Arpan have 2 kids in 1 year? But that's a different story. But things are moving really, really fast. So the questions I get often are, okay, I get I have to move to the cloud, but boy, how do I keep up? How do I make sure it's secure? And one of the things that we're doing in Azure is making sure that we're able to not only deliver a platform, but we're able to deliver the training, the tools, the templates to make sure that you and your teams can use Azure in the way that makes most sense to you. And today, I'm proud to say that over 95% of Fortune 500 companies use Azure. So pretty astounding. And they're companies across different verticals, across different countries. So just a huge ecosystem out there that use Azure. So now let's talk about the platform. That's probably why you're here. Let's talk about what Azure delivers. And so Azure, when we think about the pillars of Azure, we think of 4 different areas. We think about productivity. We want to be the most productive cloud. That basically means that you are able to do things faster and in a more productive way. We want to provide hybrid, which means that you have the ability to use services on premises, at the edge, and in the cloud. Intelligence, and one of the top buzzwords these days is AI. So how do we enable that? And trusted. So now I'm going to walk through each one of these for the remaining hour. Let's talk about productive. With Azure, we provide integrated tooling. So if you're a Visual Studio customer or even doing a lot of open source development using other tools, we provide integrated tooling with Azure. So you can actually transform from kind of your traditional dev test production to more of a DevOps culture. So we have integrated dev test right in the product. We're also shipping hundreds of updates every quarter, and there are hundreds of services out there. So when you think of the services you want, whether it's compute, storage, serverless, functions, you name it, we have it. And I'll give you some options over the next few minutes. And then unified management for IT. So we are uniquely providing not just all the empowerment, just not all the productivity for developers, but we provide unique governance and control for IT. Because one of the pieces of feedback we get is, wow, you've enabled my developers to develop a lot of applications, but boy, I'm responsible for security. I'm responsible for costs. So we've shipped recently in preview a lot of governance features that you'll actually get to see today. So let's talk about compute. So let's go up the stack. So when it comes to your infrastructure, we provide the broadest range of compute, period, out in the industry. So whether it's your virtual machines, we have different types of virtual machines. The largest virtual machine coming soon has up to 12 terabytes of memory. And I mentioned this to a customer. They're like, wow, 12 terabytes is pretty good. But it wasn't until he realized that I was talking about memory did he really understand how big these VMs are. So the 12 terabyte VMs are coming out in the next few months, and it just gives you a sense of how big these VMs are. Not only do we have all the different types of virtual machines you could ask for based on your workloads, memory intensive, GPU focused, burstable, compute intensive, but we are also unique in the sense that we have a lot of purpose-built options. So for example, if you're a customer here that runs SAP, which is a super popular workload for us, you can run SAP workloads on bare metal hardware in Azure and have up to 24 terabytes of memory. So pretty much any workload, whether it's using virtual machines or purpose-built, we're able to support today. We also have Cray supercomputing. So if you really have supercomputing needs, you can use Azure, as well as NetApp. So NetApp Files. NetApp is a popular storage vendor, and we're working with them to have a first-party offer, again, on bare metal service. In terms of some of the stats you can expect, I mentioned this before, we have anywhere from 1 gigabyte to 24 terabytes. The 24 terabytes is the bare metal offer that I spoke about. Disk storage, we have the fastest disks in the industry. So we previewed Ultra disks that support up to 160,000 IOPS per disk. So just massive, massive throughput. And then networking, you can actually have a connection from your data center to the Azure backbone up to 100 gigabits per second. That's fast. And there are companies and there are organizations like Johns Hopkins that are using that network bandwidth to effectively use Azure like an extension of their data center. So when they're doing AI-intensive models, they're able to basically use Azure and not worry about the network latency and bandwidth using some of these amazing networking capabilities. Here's a quick glance at the disks we provide. Like I said before, Ultra is in preview, but provides pretty incredible throughput and bandwidth as well. SAP. I mentioned this before. How many people here have SAP? Okay, I see quite a few hands. We have a lot of customers moving to Azure for SAP. And the interesting thing is that when you look at SAP, what we find is customers first optimize, so they're moving to Azure to make sure they get a lot of the operational efficiency, so they don't have to manage hardware, they can focus on operations. But more and more, we're finding that once customers move to Azure, then they're able to do things that they weren't able to do before. So some examples here are the Azure Data Connectors. So they're able to take data in SAP and run ML and AI models on top of that. They're able to use things like Power BI to get data visualization out of the box simply by moving SAP into Azure. So Azure effectively lights up a lot of these amazing scenarios with a workload like SAP and with other workloads, with other mission-critical workloads. Governance. Raise your hand if you're part of a team that actually cares deeply about governance. Okay, quite a few. So governance is a whole notion of, I want to have speed, I want to make sure we can innovate, but boy, I need to make sure that there's some governance, there's security, there's policy. And so I'm excited to say that recently we released some features in preview that provide you with some incredible governance capabilities. And to actually show you that instead of me talking about it, I'd like to invite up Guillermo. Guillermo, come on up on stage to actually do a demo. And Guillermo, remember what Superman said, right?
What?
With great power comes responsibility. So
a lot of responsibility for me right now.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
So why don't you show the demo, Chief?
All right, so welcome. Really, how many people here love approval processes? Nobody, right? That's what I was expecting. I saw a hand there. I wasn't expecting any hand at all. But yeah, approval processes are no fun, right? Because they slow things down. And exactly what Arpan was mentioning before, right? The cloud gives you great agility, great speed. But then if we need to keep control, we need to apply all these external processes. We have hundreds of pages of policy documents. We have meetings. We say, hey, come to me. Tell me what are the features that you want to have in your environment. We'll have 12 meetings, and then you'll be able to move, right? So it really defeats the purpose of the cloud. So for this demo, I'm going to be a product engineer in Contoso Hotel, Smart Hotel. And my main goal is going to be to create fully consistent environments for all my developers around the world. I need to do that while maintaining compliance. So I'm going to start with Azure Policy. And we're all familiar with policy, right? Arpan is a fan of policies, like the happy hour policy on Friday nights that is mandatory. He wished he could have it coded for the whole group. But in here, basically, what Azure Policy does is that allows you to create policies right in the core of Azure. It builds on ARM, so any service that is on Azure, you can build a policy upon that. So this is the main screen of my environment, and I have a view across all the subscriptions. I can get it across hundreds of subscriptions of how am I doing compliance-wise at a glance, right? I don't need to run any scripting, nothing like that. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to make sure that tags are in place in the correct resources, right? Normally, I want to do it at the resource group level. So I will enforce the right tags on the resource groups. But more than that, I can actually make that be inherited down to the resource itself. So then cost management becomes way easier. Another thing that I'm excited to show you is something that the team has been working on really hard for the last year, and is the remediation capabilities on Azure Policy. Let's explore this a little bit further, right? So think about this scenario where I need to make sure, as a member of the Cloud Excellence team, that all my VMs have diagnostic logs, right, for monitoring purposes. This, I could create a policy and have it enforced like I talked before, but you can see that there are a bunch of resources that I have here that are pre-existing. The policy does not work on that one because it's been already created. So I need to remediate. Normally, I would have to do this one by one, but I have a lot. I can actually go here and click on Create Remediation Task, and I just click Remediate. The process starts, and it's done, right? You can do that with a vast amount of policies for every Azure service. But when it really becomes cool is when we bring all these policies, but then we bring users, and we bring resources. And that comes together in what we call Azure Blueprints. And Azure Blueprints essentially is like a template, right? ARM templates have resources. So imagine an ARM template that has all these resources, but has policies and users embedded on it. And I can actually stamp it as I wish in between all the subscriptions that I have in all my environments. So let me show you this one that I have here created and that I want to deploy. I have some global policies, like I have a restriction on locations, right? I want my developers to only create resources in certain locations. I have an enforcement on the tags that I want to have. But the cool thing here is about these resource groups, right? I can actually create resource groups, and I said that I hate approval processes. So I want the central IT team to actually get access to log analytics only, right? And nobody else. But then I may want security to have access only to Key Vault, right? Because they need that. Therefore, I take out that approval process right there. Now I want to assign it to several teams around the globe that we have. So I just click on Assign. I select the subscriptions that I want. I'm going to select these 4. I can take advantage of versioning, right? So I can even manage this from a central location, meaning that I deploy, this one is 1.1. If I deploy a 1.2, I can actually track who is using 1.1 versus 1.2, right? I have control over that as central IT. And logs is actually something that a lot of customers are asking for, which means that if I'm deploying subscriptions that have foundational resources, right, and I don't want anybody to touch it, right now the subscription owner only actually can change it. But here I just click on the log, and nobody can touch it, right? I still have control over this while I allow people to move fast. I click Assign, and that's done. It takes 5 to 7 minutes. So what I've done is gone ahead right before this keynote and deployed in one of my subscriptions. And you can see that the right resource groups are in place, the right resources are created, and better than anything, I have the right policies already in my environments. And this is across all the subscriptions. I did 4, you can do hundreds. So that's it. Get speed and control with Azure Governance. The cool thing is that you can play with this today, right? And because everything that I've shown you today is free, so go ahead and check it out. Back to you, Arpan.
Thank you, G. So like G said, available today. It's in public preview, so check it out. And policy is included. So it's actually free as part of Azure. So I just talked about effectively the rehost phase, right? In the Gardner's framework, you have rehost. Now let's talk a little bit about how customers are refactoring. So refactoring is effectively, in a nutshell, we're seeing more and more people use container, where customers are containerizing. And so containers effectively allows you to actually have a more efficient way and more flexibility and agility and scale to actually build out applications. And with Azure, we provide a lot of flexibility. What's not listed here is a lot of the ecosystem support we have as well. So if you're using Docker, you can use Docker. We also ship with a lot of different native services for containers. And so the one that's become really popular is Azure Kubernetes Service. And Kubernetes is something that we're seeing people use a lot more of, and Microsoft is investing a lot in it. In fact, one of the founders of Kubernetes is actually on the Azure engineering team. And so what we've built is we've taken all the best of what Kubernetes has, portable, extensible, and self-healing, and built a managed service, which is called Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS, that allows you to go ahead and build your applications using containers, and then AKS deploys, manages, auto-scales your application without you having to do anything. So you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. You don't have to worry about the VMs. And we're finding a lot of companies that are doing, like, let's think of a retail application that might be bursty on Black Friday, which just happened, or Cyber Monday, which was yesterday, I think. They don't have to worry about scale. So as companies look to refactor applications, they're looking at things like Kubernetes, things like containers. Containers is refactor. When you look at rebuild and re-architect, the buzzword these days is serverless, where customers don't want to worry about anything except the business logic. And so Microsoft has a lot of technologies in a platform that allows you to build applications without any infrastructure, without any containers, or worrying about it. And so our platform allows you to build functions, event grids, logic apps, and underlying is all the stuff it's built on. So we manage it for you, but you as developers or you as pro users don't have to worry about any of that underlying infrastructure. And so just to show you another demo of logic apps, I'd like to actually bring up G again, who's going to show you a quick demo of how you can get an application up and running without writing, actually in this case, without writing minimal code. G?
There we go. All right. So Arpan was explaining, right? There are several ways of running serverless on Azure. One of these ways is running it through functions. Functions is through code. You're running serverless through code. You pay for every event that is triggered. But another way is doing through logic apps. And logic apps is a way to do it with no code, where you're creating workflows and declaring them. This demo is actually cool for me because it's not a demo. It's something that we use in Azure right now to improve the customer experience. So what we want to do is to understand what are the pain points that are happening on Azure today, so we can address them directly to the customer. So let me walk you through how we do that. The very first thing that we do is use the Twitter connector. And we are searching for every tweet that has the hashtag Azure. And every 15 seconds, we're gathering them. Then we can go ahead and use the API for cognitive services. In this case, is the text analytics API that I can use to understand sentiment. And this tells me whether the customer is happy, unhappy, or neutral, basically. Another text analytics API, which is to understand what are the key phrases, right? Once I get the sentiment, I want to be able to categorize them into different areas so I can actually understand what is the pain point better. If I want to run code, I can do that. So in here, I'm calling a function with a couple of variables from the previous steps that I did. And the very first outcome is creating a Power BI dashboard that I will show you. And in here, we're getting all the information from the tweet itself, right? Location, created by, what is the score, a lot of things that I can actually analyze, and we'll walk through that. And lastly, if the sentiment is less than 0.3, so this number is 0 to 1. If it's below 0.3, that we consider it a negative feeling. So we are adding that tweet to a Teams meeting or a Teams room. You could use Slack if you want to, so the engineers can check it out. And we're also creating a Dynamics 365 entry. You could use also Salesforce. There are a bunch of connectors here. So I'm just going to see there are hundreds of connectors. Since we're in the SharePoint conference, I'll just type SharePoint, just so you get a glance of everything that we have here. So bunch of connectors that you can use even with SharePoint today. Let's go to the dashboard itself. Here you see that I can see in real time. This is kind of risky for me because
this is very risky. This is live.
This is risky.
So if you are tweeting,
yeah,
go for it.
There is all these dots are where the location of the tweet is. And this is the graph that shows the sentiment, right? I said that everything above 0.5, we consider it neutral or positive sentiment, but there are some outliers here, right? So I want to drill down into those. And in here is what I warned you. You will be surprised with what people tag with hashtag Azure. So I hope that there's nothing bad here. So here, missed last week Azure Monitor AMA. That seems like average one. Automatic retry on failure, how to say back-off coefficients. These are all things that people are tweeting, and the system is identified as possible negative tweets. Here, the engineer can actually check it and follow up directly through Twitter. So then the customer experience is way better. Now, this is cool, but it takes time to build it in the sense that you may want to debug, right? And you will be asking yourself, how do I debug this? Well, you can actually go here to the overview, and you can see every instance that has been done. So this was at 8:14 a.m., which I think that was 3 minutes ago. This is Seattle time. So the first one took 710 milliseconds. I can click on it, and I can see everything that has happened in the workflow. So let's see if it loads. Everything is green, and I can see the tweet. Again, I hope that nothing bad comes here. Azure is fantastic. That wasn't planned. The sentiment that I was talking about, 0.5, so it's an average sentiment, and you can see everything that gets added right away to the Power BI dashboard. You can use this for debugging purposes. So that's it, Arpan.
Thank you, G. Thanks. And this is powerful because if you are looking, let's say your business needs a certain type of application, traditionally you would build, you'd build a web application, you would deploy it, you'd have to scale it. But again, using things like Logic Apps, you're able to get an application up and running without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. So again, a lot of great native capabilities for you and your businesses to actually go ahead and innovate. This is an eyesore. This slide will be available for you. I just put this up here to show how many updates we're doing. And so for something like Azure Functions or Event Grid, we're doing more and more innovation. So you can see over here that there are a lot of features in preview. A lot of things are coming out in GA. So again, because it's a cloud, we're able to continuously innovate across the board. OK, so let's jump to hybrid. We just covered productive. Let's talk about hybrid. Every one of those 95% customers that I talked about that are using Azure cares about hybrid. Because the reality is that hybrid is not, for us, a transition state. Microsoft actually thinks of hybrid as a durable state. There are many workloads that won't move right away. And there's some workloads that won't move ever into the cloud. This might be because of latency. This might be because of compliance. This might be because of data gravity. So there's several reasons we find that customers aren't ready to move the workload. And with that, across every product team, whether it's SQL, Azure Directory, Security Management, DevOps, or even Stack, which we'll talk about, every engineering team thinks about how can they make sure that they build functionality that's hybrid. Because again, hybrid is critical for enterprises, and we really believe in a hybrid world. And today, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about Azure Stack. How many people are familiar with Azure Stack? Raise your hand. OK. I'd say about 15%. So Azure Stack is something extremely innovative that we released about a year ago. I think it was, we GA'd it, I believe it was last September or August. And it effectively allows you to bring Azure into your data center or an edge location. So it's an integrated system, and it's built by all the hardware providers you know. So think HP, Lenovo, Cisco, Dell. They build these integrated systems. It has Azure capabilities running on it, and you could deploy it right in your data center. You can have a 4-node configuration and scale up to 16 nodes, or you can have that running at an edge location. So we're finding that there's some customers like retail organizations or manufacturing that they want cloud compute on the oil rig or on the retail floor. So Azure Stack gives you effectively a way to extend Azure into the data center or the edge. And one of the other things that we've announced, and actually before I talk about this, let me just give you an Azure Stack real customer. We're in Scandinavia. So a great example of another Scandinavian country that's using this is actually KPMG Norway. So KPMG Norway is using Azure Stack to deliver some of their services in Norway, where there are a lot of compliance requirements. So what that allows KPMG to do is they're able to use all their DevOps processes. They're able to use the same exact application that they developed for public Azure and then deploy it onto Azure Stack to deliver to the Norwegian customers. So again, Azure Stack is really able to help customers deliver value in these hybrid scenarios. We've had that for over a year. Today, there are a lot of companies across almost 60 unique countries using Azure Stack. What I'm excited to announce is something that's new, is Azure Data Box Edge. So Azure Data Box Edge allows you to bring a subset of Azure capabilities at the edge, and it's effectively a storage gateway that gives you some compute capabilities in scenarios where you may have latency. So think of a traffic signal where you have a lot of images being created. You can store them on on Azure Data Box Edge. You can actually go ahead and do AI models and apply AI, analyze the images. And the images that may be a traffic violation, you can actually send up straight to Azure. So it provides an incredible edge compute device, and it has FPGA support. So if you have workloads that are highly AI intensive, where you need a lot of intensive compute at the edge, you're actually able to do this. So this is in preview. Actually, pretty cool for a lot of different edge scenarios. So again, I highly encourage you to check this out. Windows Server 2019. Windows Server 2019 GA'd only about a month ago. And it is one of the biggest releases we've ever made. And the reason why I put this in the hybrid capability is Windows Server 2019 itself has a lot of hybrid features. And what a lot of people don't know here is that the Windows Server engineering team is investing in features inside Windows Server 2019 and outside. So if you have Windows Server 2012, if you have Windows Server 2016, if you have older versions of Windows Server, we now allow you to manage all these instances on premises with something called Windows Admin Center, where you get a view of all your Windows Server instances, whether they're in the cloud or on premises. And with just a few clicks, you can back up those instances, you can add security features, you can fail over, and that's a free add-on that you're able to use right now. So if you're a Windows Server customer today, you can download it and use it, and it's free. Windows Server 2019, again, I don't have a lot of time, has a lot of hybrid features that are coming in it. We've doubled down on security, so it's built on a lot of the foundation in 2016, and we're actually delivering things like Linux shielded VMs, which was one big area that people asked for, as well as Windows Defender ATP. We're also betting on containers. So we're finding that a lot of customers want to do container developments and some support containers on premises. So with Windows Server 2019, you'll have even better container support. And finally, when it comes to SDDC and hyperconverged infrastructure, we're working really closely with the same hardware partners to make sure that you're able to build and scale out your data centers on premises. Windows Virtual Desktop. This hasn't even shipped yet. So I'm excited to say this is coming soon. But in Azure, we will now have the ability soon to be able to host desktops. So a lot of customers, and a lot of the customers that are probably here, probably have a scenario where you have desktops that you may want remote workers to use. Today, you're probably using third-party products. You're probably using different on-premises infrastructure. You're probably using different cloud infrastructure. Well, now in Azure, we will natively provide the support. And we will uniquely provide the best Windows and Office 365 Pro Plus experience, period. So I highly encourage you to check this out and keep your eyes open because this is coming soon. Azure Migrate. And again, I'm just covering a lot of different features, hopefully giving you kind of a sense of the innovation we're doing across the board. Azure Migrate is a free service that we provide in Azure to help all of you assess your environment, assess what applications are running on premises, whether it's on physical, whether it's running in vSphere, whether it's running in Hyper-V, and then we help you move those environments into Azure. It's free, it gives you a sense of cost, and allows you to move quickly. And so the best way to actually show this to you is to actually have G show you the features and actually show you a real vSphere environment and how you can use Azure Migrate to move. So G, go for it.
All right, let's do it. Let's get it back up. All right, so how many of you have dealt with a migration to Azure or is thinking that may have to deal with a migration to Azure? Some of you. OK, so I think this is going to be very relevant here. Oh, my God. I'll need to get this back up. But, well, I can skip that piece. This is just the on-premise environment that I was going to show you. But basically, what I wanted to do is to, let me see. Here it goes. So that basically, I was RDPing into an app that we were having on premises. It was a Contoso ticketing support system, and I wanted to migrate it to Azure. And all these VMs, I was going to show you all the VMs that we had, and they were hosted on vSphere, right? So the question is, how do I get an assessment of what is going on in my environments so I can actually make the migration process better, right? Because that's the most challenging part of migrating. It's actually getting an understanding of what is a good candidate for migration, what are the dependencies of those assets that I want to migrate. So in here, basically, I was going to show you that there is a database, and I will show you right here. The way it works is that you apply or you get some agents into each of the VMs. And those agents actually track a lot of the information of what is the performance of the machines, what are the dependencies with other machines. So I've already done that, and I can show you how it looks here on Azure Migrate. So in here, I created a project, Migrate Project 2, and I have a set of machines. So these were all the machines that I was going to show you on VMware. And a couple of things that I wanted to point out. Obviously, it gets the name of the machine, but cores, memory, disks. And more important, it actually works for both Windows and Linux, right? You see some SUSE here, Ubuntu. It works for both. I want to move, or I want to migrate this database. So I'm going to click here on View Dependencies. And this is a very visual way of understanding what are the dependencies of this database. And I have 3 web front ends that are dependent on this. So what I can do right here with Azure Migrate is actually group them. And I can click on Group Machines. I'm going to call it App Support Group. And I want to create an assessment. So I click on it. And this doesn't take too long. It's already done. I can see here that the grouping is created, and I can click on viewing the assessment. And in here is where I'm going to get a lot of details of what this group is about and what are the things that I need to know when moving into Azure. The very first thing that I'm interested in is understanding cost. So I'm going to go into the cost estimate. And I can see that I'm getting a recommendation based on the performance of the machines on what actual VM family should I use, what storage capacity should I have, and what are the cost estimates that I can expect when moving to the cloud. Actually, we understand that this may not be perfect, depending on the scenario that you have. For example, you may want to change the region, so you can go and edit those properties. This could be a critical workload for you, for which we recommend Premium Disk. But if it's not, if it's a development environment, you may want to use a standard. So you can make all these changes here.
Hey Gia, this is really important. Do you guys see where it says already have a Windows Server license? So one of the best kept secrets is that if you have Windows Server with software assurance, you don't have to pay for Windows Server again in Azure. We call that an Azure Hybrid benefit. So you can run your Windows Server on premises, but also use the Windows Server software for no additional cost in Azure. And so that's a huge, huge benefit. So while he's doing the assessment, when it says, hey, do you already have a Windows Server license? If he says yes, it'll actually take out that cost in this assessment. Sorry.
Yeah, that is the most important thing that I was going to show also, because like he says, it's not very well known, but if you click yes, you're paying essentially Linux rates if you already have this. So good point, Arpan. I'm going to go back to the assessment itself because I already saw the cost. And I want to see the readiness, right? How ready I am or how ready are these machines to move to the cloud. Our check says that they are green, so they are ready to move. I didn't make any changes, so I'm going to actually use these sizes and these VM families. And what I wanted to point out lastly, because this is the assessment state, the next step would be the migration state, right? And for the Windows machines, or sorry, the virtual machines, I'm going to use Azure Site Recovery. So there is a handover from Azure Migrate to this Azure Site Recovery service with all the information that comes from here. So you don't actually need to do much. And for SQL, for the database, the same thing. We're using Azure Database Migration Service, and it will be moved to SQL Managed Instances. So this is kind of how you would go about understanding what your environments are like and get all the right information about the machines and the readiness so you can actually plan a better migration.
Thank you, Arpan. Thanks. And again, Azure Migrate works with Windows, Linux, with different databases. So again, just a great way to get an assessment. And even if you don't move right away, I just encourage you to check it out, because you can actually see how your environment is, see all your dependencies, get a nice report, and it's all free. So highly recommend checking that out. OK, so let's move to intelligence. I get to talk a lot of partners and customers, and almost within the first 5 minutes, people tell me they want AI. I'm like, what do you want to do? They're like, I want AI. I'm like, but what's your business objective? I want AI. So there's a lot of AI washing going on, and there's a lot of excitement, and for good reason, because I think AI can really do some really great things. But my advice to every customer and partner I meet is think about how to make AI real for you. So if you go away, one of the top 3, 4 things that I want you to think about is how do you make AI real for your organization? And the advice I usually give, and we're going to talk about this, is without data, you don't have AI. And so one of the first steps that people should do and look at is how to gain operational efficiencies and how to optimize your data estate, so then you're in a position of doing some amazing things and actually running AI models, doing machine learning, and actually doing transformative things. So when it comes to data, just want to talk about a few data announcements or recent investments. The first is SQL Server 2019. I'm not the data expert, but I did want to say that SQL Server 2019 in preview is available today. There's a ton of great investments we've made. You can download it, check it out. We have AI built into SQL. We support many different languages and many different frameworks, performance, security enhancements. So highly check it out, whether you're in a hybrid environment or in the cloud. The other thing that I'm very, very proud of, again, this whole idea is how do you get your data, whether it's structured or unstructured data, into the cloud, is SQL MI, or SQL DB MI, Database Managed Instances. A database managed instance, we just GA'd it, I want to say, a few months ago. And what it provides is it provides customers with a managed service. By the way, in Azure, when we say it's a managed service, it means we're taking care of a lot of the provisioning, a lot of the maintenance, a lot of the updates for you. And with Database Managed Instance, if you're a company that has a lot of SQL databases out there, or any database of any type, you can move it into Azure and then have Azure manage it for you. And the benefits are clear. There's a TCO benefit, so total cost of ownership benefit. You don't have to worry about app upgrades, and you don't have to worry about security. And what this allows you to do is take your data estate, move it into Azure, let Azure manage that for you, so then you can focus on a lot of the transformative solutions that we're going to talk about in just a minute. So this is a huge piece of functionality. Again, GA'd very recently if you haven't checked it out. Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB is one of the fastest growing services in Azure. And what we're finding is that customers like, actually I'm not supposed to mention the customer's name, but a lot of Microsoft customers, even like Xbox, are using Cosmos DB to deliver scale-out solutions. So it actually has the ability to do multi-master replication. So if you have an application running in Europe, and you want an application also running in North America, you're able to write or make a call to the database. It'll actually replicate cross regions for you within milliseconds. So just a tremendous service that does this replication for you, has a reliability, and is highly competitive when it comes to TCO from a TCO perspective. Okay, I just highlighted a couple of the data services we have. Again, I didn't talk about Postgres, I didn't talk about MySQL, but if you think of a database format, we can support it in Azure. Now let's talk about AI. In AI, there are many different things you can do, and the advice I'll give you is one of the simplest pieces of functionality that you can enable today, and that we have real customers enabling today, is doing things like automating information systems. And the technology around that would be bots or conversational agents. So I talked about UPS before. UPS is a really good example of a customer that is using Azure to deliver their mobile applications. They're actually using Xamarin to deliver a mobile application across Android, across iOS. They, within a month or two, delivered a bot service right in their mobile experience using a lot of the out-of-the-box templates that we provide. So now they're able to have a bot or artificial intelligence in their application to answer questions like, when's my package going to arrive? What's the closest post office? When will my delivery leave? So whatever those questions are, instead of taking phone calls, instead of taking a lot of human effort, they're able to deliver an amazing customer experience and reduce costs by including their bot right within an existing framework. Another great example is the Secretary of State of California. So the California state decided that they want to go ahead and engage their citizens, because citizens have a lot of questions. So the first thing that the team did was they sat down with Microsoft and said, well, I want to AIify, I want to have artificial intelligence in my website, but I want it tomorrow. I want to get it done really, really quickly. So what the team did with Microsoft is by using QA Maker, which is available out of the box, they were able to go ahead and build a knowledge database based on data that is hosted on premises and in Azure, and deliver a chat agent right within their website. So here's a really good screenshot here. This is Eureka. And if you go and just do a Bing or a Google search on California Secretary of State, you'll actually see this agent interact with you and answer questions that citizens may have. So again, you're able to engage more users. You're able to respond more intelligently. And these examples are simple examples of what you can do today to actually build on your existing investments. Another example of a customer that's a little bit more on the right-hand side, which is how they're transforming businesses, is Ochsner. They're a health system provider in the United States, based in Louisiana, New Orleans, and they are using AI to literally save lives. So what they found is that their patients who have cancer, they're able to benefit from AI because they're able to take the data, make sure that there's enough privacy scrubbing and compliance scrubbing, and then analyze which patients are more likely to benefit from which treatments. So by having all this data, by applying machine learning to it, they're able to provide predictive health care to specific patients based on their prognosis. And sometimes there isn't even a prognosis, but because of the way their data is coming from their health charts or from certain kind of blood work, if you will, they're able to predict what may happen and then actually provide medicine. And this is a great example. I actually got to talk to the chief data officer about what they're doing and how they're saving lives. And what he told me just a couple months ago was that because Azure cares about trust, cares about privacy, because of the AI capabilities, he feels just completely, he's amazed to come into work every day and actually feel like he's saving lives. And personally, this is close to me because two of my parents had cancer. So hearing about this and feeling like AI can actually save lives is actually really, really powerful. All right, the last pillar, I only have a few more minutes, is trust. You can have compute, you could have storage, you could have hybrid, you could have serverless, you could have AI, you can have data, you can have all of that. But boy, if you're not able to run the service in a way that's secure and trusted, it doesn't matter. And I can tell you without hesitating that Azure provides unmatched security and compliance. We offer more, we have more compliance certifications than any other major cloud vendor out there, across industry, across region, across the globe. And we have more regions than any other major cloud provider. We have 54 regions worldwide. So if there's a data residency requirement for a business you're in, there's a good chance you can use an Azure region for that. And if you can't use Azure and you still need it, you can use Azure Stack. So you actually have that flexibility that we provide. We also provide many different options to build a highly available solution in Azure. So I talked about regions on the right-hand side. So we have 54 regions, and we have regions in pairs. So if you have an application you want to deliver for a DR scenario, a disaster recovery scenario, you're able to deploy an application in one region and fail over to another and stay within the data boundary. We're also releasing AZs, rolling them out worldwide. Today we have them in US, Europe, and Asia, and we're lighting up AZs even more in more regions. And we're also unique in the sense that we provide a 99.9% SLA for a single VM. Other cloud vendors don't do that. So if you have a workload where you just have a single VM and you want that SLA, Azure provides it for you. Unmatched security, I'll just talk about this a little bit, then we'll have G do a final demo. When it comes to security, we spend over $1 billion a year on security across Microsoft's portfolio. And with a lot of that investments, you're able to benefit because we give you tooling and control, but we also give you a lot of the signals that we're getting from Windows, that we're getting from Xbox, that we're getting from other parts of Microsoft's business, so you're able to see and act on it. And we're going to show you how we actually give you some of this AI right within the product. And in terms of security experts, in many ways, we're one of the largest security companies because we have over 3,500 security experts at Microsoft that care deeply about your security every single day they come into work. So with that, and I know that happy hour is only 5 minutes away, but I would like to show you some of the new innovative features that are in preview today with Azure Security. Qi, coming up.
Awesome, the last one. I really am looking forward towards happy hour. Cool. So security, really, when we talk to customers, this is one of the highest, if not the highest, questions or concerns that customers have when moving to Azure, right? Questions like, hey, how am I going to control my security state? Are you exposing all the information to me? And as Arpan said, with the $1 billion that we invest, the amount of people that we have, the answer is yes. And all this is shown to you in Security Center. So Security Center is your go-to stop for understanding everything that is going on. And I like to think about it in my head as two types of information that you can get. The very first one is the proactive information. So what are the things that I can do to be more protected against future attacks, right? We know that we're going to get attacked, so how are we more protected towards that? And the reactive piece is, how do I actually know what has happened, and how do I remediate that, right? So let's go into the first part. And the first part is also a new feature that we released in Ignite called Secure Score. And the goal here is, you can see here that I have 4 areas. We give a lot of detail down to the VM itself, or the resource itself of what is going on security-wise. In this case, I have 32 things that I can do around compute, 41 for data and storage, 15 for networking, and 1 around identity. Very easy to see also. We see a lot of red, right? So my environment is actually not doing too good. Red is bad. And Secure Score is just an easy way for you to get an understanding of what to do. Because as I said, we had a lot of things that we provided to you, but the question is, hey, how do I digest this, and how do I take action? Think about Secure Score as your credit score. I don't know if Denmark has a credit score. In the US, we do, and it's something that we work to build up. So this is kind of the same concept. So let's dig into that. Right now, I'm at 715, and it's a little bit over 50%. And here I see all the things that Azure Security Center is recommending me to do, so my environments are more protected, right? And they have a point system. So in this case, right away I see the big red bar with 50 points, 50 sweet points that I can get. It's as easy as going through the process of adding it. Enable MFA for accounts with owner permissions. There is 40 points for installing system updates. Obviously, we all know that patching is one of the #1 reasons how hackers actually get access to environments. And I'm just going to dig into one, installing endpoint protection. This gives me 15 points. I can click on it. And right away, without leaving Security Center, I can go ahead and install it on those 8 VMs. There's nothing else I have to do. It's very easy for me to understand that I have to do it and to take action.
And G, what if you have VMs on premises?
I think that it works on premise. I'm not that deep into that one, actually. But yeah.
It does. So Azure Security Center, actually, you can use it for on-premises as well. So you can actually use it to protect VMs or physical machines on premises.
So it's for a hybrid environment that we were talking before, right? So that is kind of the way that is very easy for you to be proactive, right? Make sure that you are actually protected. It's better to be safe rather than complaining later. And the last piece is threat protection, right? How do I understand what has happened? And in here, we also provide a lot of data, right? And it's normally in terms of events. What are the things that have happened in a timeline? But as you can see, there are a bunch of events, right? If I'm not an expert, or even if I'm an expert, it's going to be difficult for me to understand, right? A single event is normally not how an attack works. And in here, what we are doing is to actually give context to all these things. So we have an incident event, right, that has a bunch of things that have happened. And it's telling me all the information with context. The very first thing that has happened in this scenario is SQL injection blocked, right? It's severity low because it was blocked, but we're giving you all that information. Failed RDP brute force attack. Again, they have tried a different way and they failed. But then there is one instance that actually worked. So I can see here all the login attempts that they've had. They had 60. They just needed one to get in. I can get information also on the remediation steps. So I don't have to go to Google and see how do I remediate it or get the documentation in somewhere in Microsoft Docs. You can find it right here with the 4 steps that you should do to secure this. One of them being getting help from us, which we provide. Then there's some suspicious process that was executed, so the hacker is moving forward into the process of gaining control of your resources. There has been a query of your domain accounts. These ones are not flagged as that important. The one that is the serious one at the end is this one. And I can also see, all the information about that event. I can even get geo-intelligence. Where is this coming from? In this case, it's coming from China, so I even know who's targeting me here. And I can get, again, remediation steps, right? So very easy for you to get context for both the proactive and the reactive scenarios. The cool thing about this, and I love saying it, Arpan, is that a lot of these features are free. So you can actually go and play with it at no additional cost. But for production environments, we really recommend having Security Center enabled. And
Thank you, G. Thanks. Well, with that, I want to thank you for coming. I know we just got an hour. Hopefully, you got a sense of kind of the landscape of innovation that we're doing across Azure. Can you guys flip to the slides? Hopefully, you got a sense of what we're doing across the board. And over the next 2 days, I encourage you to attend sessions and learn even more. I think for each one of these topics, we have some great speakers that have real-world experience that can walk through what they're doing and some best practices. And as you go back to your companies, I encourage you to think about assessing your environments. What are the different applications? What do you want to move? How do you want to move it? How do you want to keep things in a hybrid state? Have a migration plan. How do you optimize? We didn't talk about that today, but in the product, we have cost management tools that allow you to optimize and figure out what are the right VMs, what are the right disk sizes, what are the right offers that you can use. And lastly, secure and manage. So once you get this environment up and running, how do you ensure you secure it? And how do you make sure you manage it in a way where you can empower your developers and still control costs and security? So with that, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks.